Hi, I'm Erin Rittenhouse, and I will be talking to you guys about the tundra biome. The tundra biome holds many characteristics. It is a very cold climate, it has a short growing season, reproduction with plants and animals, and dead organic material. There are two types of tundra, and one is alpine and the other is Arctic. The Arctic tundra is circumpolar, and it surrounds the North Pole in the Eurasian and North American continents and the Arctic islands. The second type of tundra is the alpine tundra. The alpine tundra can be discovered in all latitudes, but it is fragmented into isolated mountaintop ranges in places like Russia, Nepal, and southwestern China. Both of the areas within the biome have changed over time with the different climate changes impacting different aspects of the areas with the biome. This biome is very interesting to me because the Arctic tundra has 24 hours of sunlight during some days in the summer. The summer temperatures can range from 66.5 degrees north and south to 90 degrees north and south. In the winter, there are days where the sun does not even come up. The daylight in the summer provides warmer weather, but when the sun does not come up as much, the angle of the Earth's axis drops the temperatures in the Arctic tundra. The precipitation is low because the air cannot hold that much water vapor. The Arctic tundra has a circumpolar climate variation. Since the sun angle is low, it causes changes in the microclimate. An example of this would be sunny slopes. The winters are colder, and the summer's frost-free period is cut short in the east of the Ural Mountains on Russia. The cold air comes from the mountains and flows to the valleys, making the summers colder. The alpine tundra's temperatures in the summertime range from 10.4 degrees to 50 degrees. The alpine tundra does not experience permafrost like the Arctic tundra, and it has a very short growing season. The topography of the alpine tundra creates microclimates. Microclimates are climates in small areas, and they could change every couple of feet. Snow is something that would alter the microhabit of the area. There are 3 important factors that drive the microclimates. 1, steepness, 2, slope aspect or exposure, and 3, solar radiation. The tundra biome is a cold, frozen, and dry landscape. The alpine tundra soil has a high phosphorus fixing capacity and a low bulk density, which causes the soil to be weak. In some parts of the soil, there are fallis soil, which is an organic soil that happens without being wet all year. The low temperature and high soil acidity of the biome leads to low materialization of the organic compounds. The temperature, organic matter quality, and the vegetation cover determine the nitrogen flux in the tundra soils. The soils in the alpine tundra are disturbed by erosion, freezing, and downslope slippage. There is fine material that comes from different weathering of the parent rock in place, wind deposition, and avalanches. If the soil is buried too deep below the rocks and the fine material, there is a possibility that the soil cannot get warm enough to support the plant. There are 3 different kinds of soil categories that occur in the alpine tundra. The first is called the soils, which is poorly developed rocky or stony soils, and they form on the bare rock of slopes. The second is the meadow soils, and it helps support herbs and grasses with their roots. The last soil that occurs in the alpine tundra is bog soils, and they are found in depressions. The Arctic tundra soil is mainly permafrost. Permafrost is soil that is frozen permanently. More towards the poles, the permafrost areas start to get larger and start to underline whole landscapes. When the permafrost is wet, it causes the solid rock, gravel, and soil to have limited amount of water. The permafrost in the Arctic tundra causes the landscape to create different patterns like nets and stripes. Depending on what the level of the landscape is determines what the shape will be. On level ground, there can be nets and polygons, but on steeper slopes, you will find more of a striped pattern. During the summer, the permafrost will melt down and allow different kinds of vegetation to grow. The tundra has wetlands that happen when the permafrost melts. There is shallow standing water throughout the tundra when the permafrost melts. The soil tends to take up less room once the ice is melted, and it creates a land lump called thermokarst. And the ice in the center of the permafrost where the soil is expanding is called a pingo. The ice gradually exposes itself during the summer, and it will start to melt away, creating a crater in its place. The Arctic tundra's vegetation consists of mosses, senges, and lichens. The alpine tundra's vegetation consists of rosettes, shrubs, and herbs. The animals that reside in the alpine tundra are rock wrens, deer, mouses, elk, mountain goats, and alpine chipmunks. There are also two different variations within the animal species that are in the high and low Arctics, like brown bears, sandpipers, Arctic hares, timber wolves, and polar bears. The low Arctic, North Canada, has the most vegetation out of all the areas of the Arctic tundra. The vegetation tends to primarily be grassland with willow shrubs. The vegetation in the low Arctic fills the non-forested area around the trees and groves. Shrubs are killed to maintain the open woodland of the tree line. There is a tall shrub tundra that mainly forms around rivers and lakes that has pockets of little hairgrass. The hairgrass and the matgrass give a habitat to moose in northwest Canada and Alaska. The high Arctic North Pole is a polar desert and angular from the frost action and mostly bare rock. The tundra has a tree line that shows the transition between the forest and the Arctic and alpine tundras, where there is a lack of vegetation. The tree line shows how far north the trees can grow and is controlled by many factors like rocks, soils, and wind. The growing season lasts 180 days and can start growing at temperatures above freezing. The plants have an antifreeze tissue that keeps them from freezing. The freezing of the soil under the plants keeps the plants from having a longer growing season. Different plants have different ways of acquiring moisture, like trapping water in their compact canopies and absorbing their own weight in water, because there are a lot of water shortages. The animals in the Arctic have circumpolar distribution, and you can find them all over the North Pole. The animals in the alpine regions have patchy distributions because of the high mountains. The patterns of distribution in both the alpine and Arctic are vary from continuous to dispersed. The animals in the tundra need to be adapted to the plant growth season and the cold winters. Some animals can control the amount of heat they take into their bodies based on the climate changes. Brown bears and bighorn sheep have a physical adaptation to control their blood flow so they can keep their bodies warm in the winter. A contemporary environmental issue that is affecting my biome is global warming. Global warming is causing the ice in the tundra to melt, causing different issues such as sea level rise, habitat loss, and rising CO2 emissions. Some of the animals that live in the tundra look at the ice sheets across the water as different ways to get food. For instance, killer whales rock ice patches to knock the seals into the water. After the seal is knocked into the water, they can eat it. This is one method the animals use the ice to get food. There are layers of ice sheets within the glaciers that contain millions of little ancient air bubbles that are full of CO2. When the glaciers melt, so do the different ice sheets that make up the glacier. As the ice sheets melt, the trapped air bubbles in them release into the atmosphere and cause a rise in CO2 levels that burn a hole in the atmosphere, causing the Earth to warm up beyond a normal pattern. When the glaciers break apart and melt into the ocean, it causes sea levels to rise. For further reading and more information, Al Gore, a former vice president of the United States, wrote about global warming in great detail in his book, An Inconvenient Truth. His book has a New York Times #1 bestseller and was also made into a documentary in 2006.